obviously I have to ask, as a young Greenie, how did you get into music? What first kind of picked your ears up to music and drums?
It's a really funny story actually, how I started playing the drums, because I was late. I started in my last year of primary school, so I was 10, and I was late for class one day. And in my school there was two classes for each year, so I was year 6. I was late. My teacher, I still remember her name, Mrs. Lunn, and then the other teacher in that year, Mrs. Webster. It was a new school, new classrooms, and they had this little art department in between the two classrooms for the year. I arrived late. My teacher said, everyone's next door. They're doing a drum lesson. So just go through, be quiet, and sneak in at the back. She'd give us a sheet of paper, and she was like, just listen to the drum teacher's questions, fill in the yes or no or whatever multiple choice answers. So I went to the back, got me a bit of paper. No one in the class saw me go in, and I sat at the back. But there was one girl, I still remember her name, Lisa Jones. She didn't want anybody to see her answer, so she had a paper like that. And I just copied her answers because I didn't have a clue. It was like a call and response thing from the drum teacher with the snare drum, whatever. And if you got 17 or over out of 20, you got offered free drum lessons at the school. And that's how I started. But she didn't take the lessons and I did. So
okay,
that's how I actually started drumming. And then I learned I got lessons for 2 years, and then I was around 12 and I started listening to 80s rock music. But I'd learned all the kind of basic beats. So by the time I was listening to these albums, which were mainly basic 4/4 things, I could play them. And then that's when the kind of obsession started. And that's when I was like, this is my purpose, sort of thing.
Yeah. Was there any particular drummer influences on those records that you kind of look to and still look to now?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it's that initial, it's like you're planting a seed with you when you first get hooked. It was like drummers like Tommy Aldridge, Tico Torres, Rick Allen, Lars Ulrich, Steven Adler. And then it was like, well, you do the usual, what did they listen to? So it was like Bonham, Ian Pace, Bill Ward, like Simon Kirk, all those guys as well.
So whereabouts were you living, mate, in that time?
I'm originally from Gateshead, which is just next door to Newcastle, really. So that was the stomping ground, free lessons at school, doing first gigs were talent shows at school. And then I was a bit naughty and used to stay off school and hang around in a music shop. And it was all these kind of 40-year-old guys. And I was 14. And I'd just sit in the music shop and learn from them. And then my first gigs were with those older musicians. So that's where I kind of cut my teeth, just doing covers in pubs, sneaking in the pub, and kind of did that for a few years. That was my education, really.
I think there's so much to be said for that. Playing, I know it's great to play and practice on your own, it's essential, but I'll definitely sort of celebrate what you say, that playing in a room with other people and cutting your teeth and just making mistakes in front of other people is almost kind of worth, 20 rehearsals, isn't it?
Yeah. Exactly. You can rehearse for or practice for however many times or for however long, but that first gig is going to be so many practices and rehearsals in one, isn't it? Like you say, you've got to do the trial and error, and the old saying, if you make the same mistake, keep doing it, and people call it jazz, So it's one of them. Still do that now.
I know all the jazzers making a living out of their mistakes. Brilliant.
Oh, I wish I could play jazz. I wish.
So I'm guessing from that period, obviously, you played throughout your school years. Did you have, apart from playing in the pubs that you just said, did you have any original bands in Gateshead in that area when you?
Yeah, I had my own band when I was 14 because I was playing in other people's bands. It never changes. The politics of bands now as an adult and dealing with the music industry were the same politics when I was 13. I wasn't happy with the material we're playing, so I was like, I'm going to form my own band. I stole one of the members, and for a while I was the singer, and we were just doing more rock stuff. And then we started writing our own songs, and then just the usual, as you do a gig in a pub, the headline band spots you, you get headhunted, and then you join another original band, and just did that, for 9 years before I had my first kind of real break, really. So
yeah. And was your first sort of main break, was it Little Comets? Was that the first?
It was Detroit Social Club. So Little Comets.
It's the other way around. Okay.
Yeah, we're both from the Northeast, and we both got signed to major labels at the same time, 2009. So we knew we'd gone through that whole toilet tour around Newcastle and Gateshead for many years. So it was Detroit Social Club, and that was, and later on came Little Comets a few years later.
Great stuff. Have you got any particular kind of memories and sort of stuff of those early gigs, mate, with Detroit and Little Comments that kind of come to mind?
Loads. I mean, especially with Detroit Social Club, because it was like 6 Geordie lads who we didn't go to London to get signed and do that thing. I'd done that in other bands. I'd been in the back of the transit van traveling from Newcastle to London every weekend for like years, but with this band it happened very quickly, so it was a bit of a shock. And then we just hit a real stroke of luck with a few things. We ended up the manager of Arctic Monkeys took us on, and that led to really big support tours. We like supported Oasis, and they turned into really big fans of ours, and it was just like, wow, like, you know, from my generation, it was 13 when What's the Story, Morning Glory came out, and then you've got like Noel and Liam talking about you in interviews and going, we want you to play with us, and hanging out with those guys, and that's what you dream of as a music fan, that kind of stuff.
It really is. So from Detroit to Little Comets, and then obviously Van came around, which I saw you with. And how long were you with Van?
I was the second drummer, so I came in 2015 until 2018. So I was really lucky because I had like 10 years of going in between bands without stopping, and behind that I was doing a lot of session work. It was a really, really good like decade spell. So it was like Detroit for 3 years, Little Comets for 4 years, and then Van for 3 years. And then a few other bits and bobs with different bands to tie it over, kind of thing.
So when did you come over to the Great Natal Drums?
That would have been, that was I think it was around 2015, because I was actually at the drum show. It must have been the year before we were there, and I seen George, and it was funny because he'd been told to check out Vant, but he didn't know I was the drummer. I'd obviously known George for years anyway.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, Greenie, what are you up to now? And I was like, I'm in a new band now, Vant. He's like, what? I've been told to check you guys out. So I was like, well, let's just get it sorted, you know, like George is a legend, so...
Yeah. You already had a sort of a working relationship with him, didn't you? So
yeah,
it made sense.
Yeah.
So did you end up going up to Milton Keynes and checking out the gear and stuff?
Yeah, like I'd already seen and heard like great things, obviously, and then I went up and tried a few different kits, and then just obviously sold straight away. And just you know, working with George, he looks after everybody. He's just a legend. So it was a no-brainer. And then got like obviously a loaner kit, and then just an amazing company. They just said, well, do you want to design your own custom kit? And I was like, wow, this is incredible. So yeah, it all happened very quickly. And
when I saw you, did you have? I'm pretty sure you had a black with a blue stripe around it. Is it
the main one, which is the Originals custom series, which is the Champagne Sparkle Piano Black Lacquer Split, which is like my prized possession. So that's 24 by 20 bass drum, 13 by 11 rack tom, and 18 by 16 floor tom, 14 by 8 snare. It's all maple wood. And I mean, that's been used on most recordings I've done with other bands as well. Especially, like I say, the snare drum. Every time I use that snare drum, the producer or the engineer will be like, leave that snare on. Because it's 14 by 8, you can crank it. So I've done like more poppy sessions or lighter, not rock kind of sessions, and you've got all that versatility. And it just sounds so good. It's just like, everywhere I've played it, it sounds just amazing. And I've got another kit similar sizes, 20 by 16 bass drum, 13 by 9 rack, and 16 by 16 floor tom. Couple of snares. I've got a 14 by 6.5 maple. I've got a brass 14 by 8 as well, which is beautiful. And I've got an acrylic as well, 14 by 8. It's really nice. It's quiet as well. It's like, I've used it on a few smaller gigs, and you can see like, oh, what's this snare going to be like? But it's actually really controlled. You get like I don't know if it's because of the acrylic, but you get a really like kind of Phil Rudd sound, like really dry. Quite low, but not loud.
Yeah, because often people associate the acrylic with being kind of bombastic and quite loud.
That's what I thought, and then I tried it on a small gig, and it was like, actually, this works. And a few people were like, that sounds sits in really nice. So yeah, I feel very privileged to be playing Natal, because they're just Amazing.
So I know, sort of coming out of Van, you know, like all of us drummers, man, we keep busy, and you've always struck me as someone that, you know, you don't, you know, when say like a time in a band, which we've all had, where sort of things kind of, for whatever reason, they just run their course. But I've obviously, like we all do in this kind of world, I'm always aware that you keep very active, and I was
Yeah.
aware very quickly that you got into teaching and sharing your knowledge of drums, and even I even maybe associate you with going to have lessons again yourself to help teach other people. Am I right in remembering that?
Yeah, I went to see Steve White. So I
Great.
bought a double pedal off Steve White, and I went to his house, and I said, "What are you up to?" And he said, "Oh, I'm doing a bit of teaching." I was like, "I'd be honoured if I could get some lessons from you." So yeah, I'd got lessons with him for about a year, and just really good. Like develop bad habits I'd developed, which I didn't realise. Posture, like raising the snare, and just I'm so glad I did it. I think it's really important, even though I am a teacher, to get lessons myself. So yeah, it was incredible. I remember when Vant came to an end, and it was a very like, what do you do now kind of thing. And he was really, really supportive on that side of things, like the industry side. And then he was like, you should get into teaching, man. He was like, just teach what I've taught you. He was really like kind and helpful in that way. Just like a lovely guy, and just an amazing drummer. Someone I'd listened to as a kid, like, you know, all the Weller stuff. And that was
That's
so
great.
amazing.
It says a lot about a person who's able to kind of pass on their thing to the next guy or girl, you know. It's great. So did you set up so sort of quickly from after that, in and around that time, did you continue to just kind of teach local drummers or people that got in touch with you?
Yeah. I set up like, because I've always had the Greenie Drums website, and then I just kind of modernized it, put some teaching stuff on there, and started to get a lot of inquiries. And then I'd originally, I was like, I had a break from touring, and I wasn't getting, I'd said I'd done that like 10-year spell, and then there was a gap. So I was like, okay, what shall I do? I'll try and do some like maybe master classes or Q&As. So I reached out to a few like music academies, started getting some teaching work there. Doing bits of session work still, but no tours. Did one tour last year, at the end of 2019. And then I just kind of got lots of inquiries from lots of drummers who had seen me on tour or whatever, or musicians. And then that eventually led to sort of online lessons at the start of the pandemic. And then it all kind of, the next chapter started, I guess.
Well, mate, it's been really, really great to talk and sort of catch up with you, and sort of just to sort of celebrate all the great stuff that you've done, and all the, you know, all the great stuff you're continuing to do. And yeah, on behalf of Natal, nice one, mate, for doing this today.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great. It's great to catch up.
Thanks, Greenie, mate. Look after yourself.
You too, mate. Lovely to see you. Thank you for having me.
See you, man.